I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Like to do roll call, Rochelle?
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember White. Present. Councilmember Dan Hahn. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Dan Hahn is absent. Council President Cox. Present. Councilmember Stubble. Present. Councilmember Josh Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Present. All right, I think I got the right paper up here. Work session. First of all, in the work session, we're gonna have staff updates. Start with you, Chief.
I don't have anything unless you guys have questions.
Anybody have questions for the chief? Right now? None? Okay, we'll move on. Hunter.
We're gearing up quickly for Light Up Lander, making sure lights are operating and making it look Christmassy here pretty soon. You'll see, this kind of just came across my desk today, potential change order for the tank and pump station project for addition of time to get that project done. They're running into some delays on equipment that came in, and they're going to propose a change order to add 65 more working days to their project. To substantial completion was supposed to be December 15th. Now they're looking at April 15th on getting that done. So obviously in the work session, just kind of giving the heads up, that'll probably be in your packets for the next regular session.
Questions for Hunter?
I do
Go
have a
ahead.
question. Thank you, Mayor. Hunter, thank you for that update. My question would be 65 working days are not actual working days due to weather. So within that change order, does it account for days missed if the weather does not permit?
Yeah, they're asking for 50 working days and then they're adding 15 for weather, just in case. So that's where the 65 comes into, is what they're going to ask for.
Okay,
Within that, they're asking for multiple days for multiple different things. The engineer and project manager on the project is recommending to approve some and recommend to deny some of them too. So,
okay.
yep. So it's a good thick packet full of emails and all kinds of letters and
Okay.
stuff to get context on it all. But just, if we were hoping to have that project done here in December,
Right.
it's probably not going to happen. It won't happen here in December. It'll likely happen in the spring.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? None? Regine?
Thank you, Mayor. Ann wanted me to announce that the last tranche of public input for the master planning went live today. So there's press releases, it's on our social media, and there's also written handouts at the front counter. We'd like people to go ahead and fill out those surveys. And again, that's the last bit of public input before the master plan is completed. The second thing is the rodeo request for proposals is just about done. It should go out early next week. That will be published in rodeo magazines and papers for about 2 months in order to try and do a good reach for a potential concessionaire for next year. So that should be live next week. The only other thing I have is our employee Christmas party is Friday, December 6th. And we usually ask council if they would like to make a donation for beverages. If you would like to do that, please get that to me or Ann at City Hall by next Wednesday. Happy to answer any other questions.
Questions? Missy?
A simple one, Regine, what's the last day of public input for the master plan?
December 15th.
Okay, thank you.
And Mayor, I do have one more thing I forgot about.
Go ahead.
They're cueing me over here on the side. Thank you, Rochelle. There is in your shared drive a staff update on the Lander Housing Authority and Table Mountain Living Community Paths Forward. It's not appropriate for an entire work session, but I did want to get you guys thinking about the Housing Authority has requested a termination of the land lease. According to Adam, it doesn't require council action. It's mutually agreed to by both parties in writing, but I wanted to let you know that they're requesting a termination of that land lease. In relation to that, we also had a resolution 1325 that allowed the city to encumber that land for loans that might be incurred by Housing Authority. And I think in the next December regular session, there will be a revocation of that resolution so that the Housing Authority cannot put any liens or encumbrances on the land. Any questions on that so far? Okay. The last thing to note is that there's an outline on here on the council had asked, how do we go forward as a council if we want it to be city owned and city operated? There are a number of paths. All of them require funding by the city of Lander. All of them, or many of them, require an investment to determine what funding paths are available. That investment would be in staff resources and perhaps staff dollars. I just bring that up because it is a high priority. It's a #1 priority on your strategic plan for a memory care assisted living facility. If the council would like to go forward, you're going to have to authorize staff to spend some time and some resources to research the best way to accomplish that. And what I put in your shared folder is just, like I said, an outline of some of the potential paths forward to fund such a facility.
So what's that listed on in our shared drive?
I think it's called Housing Authority Update. I don't recall what.
Staff housing, or is that something different?
Yes, Staff Housing Authority Update. That's correct. Because it's the Housing Authority, of course, has no statutory authorization to present to you guys anymore, but that's why I'm calling it a staff update. And the Housing Authority has volunteered a lot of this information, but they have no authority to go ahead and work forward on it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Regine, we're going to bring this to another work session after we have time to review that file and then have some discussion about if we want to make that direction. Is that?
I think that
Where
would be at the behest of the council. So if you would like us to do that, here's some avenues we can look for. But know that reviewing and researching any of these avenues is going to take a lot of staff resources and perhaps some money investment. So that's why I kind of need a general nod to go forward. I'll bring it to a future work session, realizing there's not a work session in December. So it might be January or February before anything was brought to a work session.
I mean, Mayor, could we, one, consider scheduling a work session in December, perhaps bumping it forward a little bit, but I look forward to reviewing this and then considering if we're going to give the head nod for the expenditures. It feels,
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'd get a head nod tonight if we have to choose tonight, but not knowing the cost.
No, and I could check with Adam and Rochelle, but I think it would be appropriate at the December 10th meeting if you want to just have a discussion item, a non-voting discussion item at December 10th for that general
Yeah.
consensus, that would work.
Let's plan on that.
Yeah, I'm game for that. And I'm kind of crushed that you think we're not going to gather together on Christmas Eve. I kind of had my heart set on a council meeting that night.
Play Santa.
I'm coming anyway. It was Rochelle that canceled.
We could be like, come in your jammies Christmas Eve council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Regine?
That's right.
None? Shari,
I don't have anything unless you have a question for me.
questions for Shari? None? Adam?
Just to follow up a little bit with what Regine had said about the lease agreement for Table Mountain Living. The lease agreement itself said either party can terminate with written notice of, can't remember how many days, but we've received their notice and we're going to produce one to them. So as she said, it doesn't require council action because it is part of the contract. But other than that, I don't have anything else unless you have questions.
Questions for Adam? Answer is none. Rachel?
I have nothing less.
Any questions for Rachel? All righty, we'll move on. Right now, we're gonna have a presentation for the final design of the Pope Aggie River Park and Pathway TAP grant. Casey, you're up.
All right, Mr. Mayor. So thank you for letting me join you tonight to give an update on our Proposia River Park Pathway project. I've got a few slides prepared. We'll talk about where the design stands. It's almost complete. We're pretty close to the finish line, but just wanted to update everybody on kind of what we've came up with as far as that design goes. So I'll do a real quick introduction, then we will talk about the path alignment. That's pretty important. Talk about path cross sections. There are some different types of cross sections, which I'll get into. We'll discuss North First Street. We do have some proposed changes versus what's out there now. Then we'll talk about some design considerations. We'll talk about Main Street. That's kind of an attached topic. Then we'll hit on schedule and then wrap things up with questions and discussion. So this project has two main scope items. The first one, as you can see, is a full design of the path, starting down at Main Street, going all the way up to the new Proposia Park up on Poor Farm Road. And then the second part of the project is a Main Street crossing study. You know, how do we get people safely across Main Street, essentially connecting Barney Trail with the new pathway? And I just wanted to point out, this is a TAP grant funded effort. So all of our design effort and stuff like that comes from a TAP grant. And I know Regine can talk more intelligently about that than I can. All right, so this is our straight out of our plan set. This shows the path alignment. So as I said, we're starting down at Main Street. Hopefully you can see the cursor there. We're going to go up North First Street until we get to Washakie, and then we're going to go east and tie in with the existing path. We're going to generally follow that existing path along the river with a few changes that I'll talk about here in a minute. Then we're going to tie into Eugene Street. We're going to go west along Eugene until we get to Railroad, and then we're going to follow Railroad up to Poor Farm Road. So along that route, we do have a few different types of path going in. Any place that we're paralleling an existing street, we're going to use the sidewalk to our benefit. So we're going to widen that existing sidewalk. In some places it's non-existent, some places it's up to 4 feet wide. We're going to widen that to a 5 foot wide sidewalk so that we meet ADA requirements for passing and things like that. And frankly, end up with a much more inviting place for people to walk. In those areas, bicycles will be out on the street like they are now. Any place that we have a shared path, such as along the river, we will have a 10 foot wide path. And so the intent there is that bicycles and pedestrians would share that space. And so, excuse me, along the river, we've got an asphalt path. We've also got a path alternate that kind of cuts across the grass behind the chamber and gives a more direct route up to Washakie Street. That'll also be asphalt. We're going to take advantage of the existing sidewalks on Eugene and the existing gravel surfacing on Railroad Street. So no major improvements there, just signs. But the north third of Railroad Street is just a 2-track road. And so we're going to go in with a 10 foot wide path up there as well. But that'll be gravel surfaced. So we're doing a little bit less along Eugene and Railroad because long-term, we hope this path follows the river more, but there's a lot of questions there. And so at least for now, this gives us a way of connecting the city's path system. And then I guess one more thing before we go to the next slide. We do have some hatched and kind of shaded areas. Those represent the floodplain. And so those are a big consideration on this as well, which I'll talk about here in a couple of slides. So these might be a little bit difficult to see, but this just kind of illustrates the different cross sections. So the upper left one, that is our gravel surface path. It's 10 foot wide. It's specifically designed so that once it's placed and compacted, it's ADA compliant. So that's the big thing there. And then below that, as I said, we're going to widen sidewalks to 5 feet wide. And then the 3 cross sections on the right-hand side, those are asphalt sections. They're just different scenarios. Some places we have some drainage we have to deal with. But the bottom one is the one that we're going to implement in the floodway. And so that's to give us a little bit better protection. So it's got concrete block armament on each side of the path and a little bit more robust section. So now jump into North First Street. So of course, we're going to widen the sidewalk to 5 feet, as I mentioned. But if you look at this slide, probably the first thing that jumps out is the bump out that we've included. And that's intended for a few reasons. First, it provides protection to parked vehicles there. And actually, we're able to gain a few additional parking places. Right now, they can't park there because it's no parking for safety reasons. And so we do gain some parking. It also narrows North First Street, so crossing is safer for pedestrians. And there are a lot of pedestrian crossings that happen at this intersection. And then last, this essentially makes this a no semi-truck route. And so we've made it narrower. We've included signage. So the intent there is that the semi-trucks that currently use that would not be able to use that in the future. And then as you can see there, we've got the painted bike lane and then the pedestrian or the vehicle travel lane as well. So as I said, we do have some design considerations. The first is ADA compliant. We want to make sure everything is meeting the regulations. So that's everything from the cross slope of these paths to the grade along the path, making sure we have surfacing that allows things like wheelchair access. Also making sure we have proper widths for wheelchairs and other types of access, and then things like ADA ramps. We also want to make sure we're minimizing wildlife impacts. So we did reach out. We got feedback from Game and Fish as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They gave us some input, things like timing. So we've included in our specifications specific periods of time when work cannot happen, particularly down along the river. And then things like fences so that we don't stop wildlife migration. So we're actually going to go in with fences similar to what you see in this photo. That's what's out there right now. Just a post and rail fence, plenty of room underneath the bottom rail for animals to get through there, and not particularly tall so that wildlife can get over them as well. As I said, in the floodway, we do have to have some considerations. So if we put any fill in the floodway, if our final elevation is higher than it is now, then we have to do a hydraulic analysis that shows there's no negative impacts. Because we have a fairly short section in the floodway, instead we've decided to lower the grade. So our final elevation will be lower than what's out there now, so that we can easily say we are not causing any rise in floodwater. And then we're also going to look at erosion and path sustainability. As I talked about, we have the erosion mats that we're going to put in the floodway. We're also maintaining at least a 45-foot separation in any place that has active erosion. And that's based on not only our own observations and analysis, but also input from Game and Fish. There are some places that's closer, but those places are either already armored or they show no signs of erosion. So that kind of covers the design part, the first part of the scope. As I said before, the second part is the Main Street crossing study. The whole point here was to develop some alternatives, ways to get people safely across Main Street. I think as we've all experienced, it's a little bit challenging down there to cross Main Street and not safe for pedestrians or vehicles. So we collected quite a bit of traffic data that included volumes and speeds of traffic, pedestrian crossing counts, turning movements of vehicles, all of that kind of stuff. And it turns out our peak pedestrian hour is in the evening, around 7 to 8. And that's just the peak from the dates that we collected. And during that time, about 50 pedestrians. So there's going to be hours where there's no pedestrians, a handful of pedestrians, but during that peak hour, there are 50, which is a pretty significant amount. Once the path is completely constructed and people really are trying to use Barney Trail and go all the way north to the new park, we project that that's going to increase somewhere around 65 pedestrians per hour as a peak. So we developed 4 alternatives. The one on the left, it's probably a little bit tough to see, but this is what we call a grade separated crossing. That means that you cross at a different elevation than the road is. So it's either a bridge or an underpass. And so there's really no place for a bridge over Main Street. So this is an underpass that's incorporated into the bridge. Then on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, excuse me, are 3 options that are at grade crossings. So the top one is a crosswalk with a median and signs. So just a simple crosswalk. The one in the middle is what we call a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So it's got the crosswalk, it's got the median, but then it has these beacons that flash yellow lights. Those can be user initiated to warn traffic that there's somebody occupying the crosswalk. And then the bottom one is what we call a hybrid pedestrian beacon. And it actually looks like stoplights, but instead of stoplights, it's these large red flashing lights. Again, they can be initiated by the user, and it's just another level of warning to the folks using the crosswalk. So we compared these based on, you go back. We compared these based on things like cost and, you know, how compliant pedestrians are, vehicles are, all of those types of things. We actually recommended the middle option on the right, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon. We felt it was a nice compromise between enhanced safety, but affordable at the same time. We have had discussions with YDOT, however. They are opposed to any at-grade crossing. So they currently would only support the grade separated crossing or the underpass option. So at this point, there's not much we can do until it becomes feasible to construct something in conjunction with the bridge. Schedule-wise, so tentatively, we're aiming for the end of the year to wrap this up. Design is currently going from 90% to final. The study, Main Street is finished. We are just waiting on a few agency things from YDOT and a few other agencies, and then we'll be able to wrap this up. And that picture is a great example of the sidewalk on North First. You can see it's variable. There's no ADA compliance in some areas, non-existent in some areas. So just imagine what that'll look like with a nice, consistent, wider sidewalk, much more inviting for everybody, as well as just local users in that area for businesses. And that's my quick update. I'm happy to take any questions or discussion.
Questions for Casey?
I do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Nicole.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Casey. I valued that presentation. It was well done. I have a couple of questions. One would be in reference to your comment about flood mitigation and that you have some strategies to assist with that. My question that wasn't maybe talked about was what was happening downstream. Is there had been any consideration that we're not going to cause harm downstream at any capacity that you're aware of?
Right. And so, you know, we're not trying to improve, we're not going to improve what's out there now, but by making sure that our path is lower than the ground is now, then we know that we won't increase any water elevations. And so we will not cause any problems downstream that are not already down there.
Okay. And then the other thought I had was in reference to the underpass crossing, because we've talked a little bit about that within I mean, it's just been a discussion item. Nobody's really brought it to the table for us to consider, but the idea of widening underneath the road for an underpass, specifically as it relates to potential mitigation. Has there been any serious consideration for that
So we looked at
for
it
this
from
project?
a planning
Mhm.
level. I mean, I've crawled around underneath that bridge. I don't know if anybody else has been under it, but it's not the most inviting place to be.
No, it's not. It's awful. Yeah.
And there's other challenges with that too. Just transitioning from the elevation you would have to be under the bridge back up to ground level. There's not a lot of horizontal distance there. So it would require things like retaining walls and stuff. And I can tell you that option is by far the most expensive because it would, and that assumes that it's done in conjunction with a bridge replacement. And that's really what it would take. It would be almost impossible to retrofit what's out there now because of the way the bridge is currently supported.
And would you guess that the state would not be interested in a bridge replacement? The Wyoming Department of Transportation?
It's hard for me to predict. I think they would support that before they would support letting us put a regular crosswalk in.
Oh, interesting.
Is what they've indicated.
Well, if they are, I mean, if that's actually true,
Yeah, that'd be a plus.
then that would benefit all of us. Would it? I mean, that's right. That's correct. Okay. Well, good to know. Thank you.
So Mayor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
We have had those conversations with YDOT, not necessarily in conjunction with this study, but in conjunction with the flood mitigation study, where they are planning on, I'm not going to say redoing the bridge or raising the bridge, but they have plans for changing the configuration of that bridge in a triple box culvert type of configuration, and that would allow a pathway However, it would be seasonal because during high waters, that pathway would probably be flooded. So some of those conversations are going on in conjunction with other projects also.
That's great to hear because I think that if you can leverage other projects and making the most, use of dollars and time, et cetera, makes sense to me. Thank you.
Councilman Hahn?
Yeah, so you brought up flooding. I mean, that thing would be kind of seasonal for sure, because if you've ever watched the river down there in the right time of year, it's pretty crazy. Has anybody looked into like an overpass, like something small? Or, I can't see anybody going under the bridge and having that last for very long. That sounds like it's leading to a bad situation.
Yeah, that's a great question. The challenge with an overpass is because you'd have to get so high above the road, and to meet any kind of ADA requirements, you'd either have to put in some kind of elevator or a very long ramp, both which would be very expensive. And so we eliminated that right away just because of we didn't view it as feasible.
The cheapest thing would be walk to First and cross at the crosswalk. Which nobody does. They always jump out in traffic at that first. So
Councilman White?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Jones, again for this presentation. I had a question about the alignment or placement of the path north of Eugene. So when that subdivision between Eugene and Poor Farm was put in, as per our subdivision requirements, there was a dedication of land in lieu of park space to be kind of on the periphery of the flood zone, but potentially in the flood plain. Is that no longer being considered for the pathway to be closer to the river? Because you mentioned being on Railroad Street. And again, I think, aren't there some quirkiness about who actually owns Railroad, if it's truly a Lander Street or a private road? So I think both of those are jumping out to me as questions.
Yeah, it's my understanding that Railroad Street is a city street. There is right of way there. And so that's what we've tried to stay in. Yeah, as far as going north along the river, certainly that's the preferred option from a user's standpoint. But there are challenges that just with the river itself, we don't know what's going to happen with the future river changes, if any. And so it would be premature to try to design something and then even worse to build something that then may have to be torn out later. And so in my view, it's better to do something that's inexpensive by going down Eugene and up Railroad rather than spend a lot of time and effort and money building something that may have to get torn out later. It would be much better to wait until we know exactly what the what's going to happen with that river, with some of the stuff that's going on with the flood mitigation stuff, and then look at the path along there. That was our approach.
Councilman Larson, did you have something?
Yes, going back to the First Street crossing. You're saying that YDOT was not really too thrilled about an on-grade crossing, but that middle one that you suggested with the flashing lights, does the flashing lights, does that give the pedestrians any right of way, or is that just alert the cars that they're there and they can make them dodge from whatever they want to, or what's what's the purpose of the flashing lights if they don't stop traffic?
Right, that's a great question. So, I mean, it's a legal crosswalk. There'll be signs, yield to pedestrians. I mean, legally you have to stop and yield to them. The flashing lights are there to basically so drivers have an advanced warning. They don't have to see the person to know somebody's using the crosswalk, and they'll see the flashing lights.
Okay. Yeah, I personally like the under the bridge type thing, if you could make it viable and to where it wasn't a scary thing. But, and then the other question I had is, you said there'd be no semi truck turning on First Street. That is really going to hinder truck traffic, especially going out North Second Street, because turning on First Street where it has one-way traffic anyway. You're off in that far lane. You've got plenty of room to make the turn, where if you get up to Second Street and you've got traffic in the other lane. I think that I seen where the city was doctoring a fire hydrant there just this last week that got tagged from a truck making a turn there. And I don't know if that no semi truck traffic is written in stone, but it would be something to think about.
Yeah, that's great input. The challenge there is, so we would lose parking. We'd have to lose the bump out to maintain truck traffic. And then we have the challenge of, we're really trying to focus on, the pathway system and really facilitate things like bicycles and stuff like that. And that becomes much easier to do if we can eliminate those semis. And we've got videos of all kinds of vehicles trying to make that turn there. And it's amazing that we don't have more accidents there than we have. We have people going the wrong way. I mean, you name it, it happens out there. And so we just felt like if we could eliminate those larger vehicles, that it would be in everybody's best interest.
The larger vehicles still need to get to the north side of town.
They do.
And so that would be something to consider somewhere along the line. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Mayor.
Councilman Stoll?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Jones. You've been doing a lot of public meetings lately,
I
so
have.
you're looking for a night off, I bet. I have a comment, and then a couple questions. The comment is, it's just frustrating, I'm sure for all of us, once again, to sit here and have YDOT tie our hands on a variety of what would otherwise be cheaper and frankly, excellent options, especially when we can all look at those pictures of at-grade crossings and think about Pinedale and many other Wyoming towns where those are highly functional, seem to work well, at least from my anecdotal experience. So once again, YDOT puts up far too many obstacles, I think, for how we can manage traffic and pedestrians in this town. And it seems now that we're at the stalemate of waiting for a massive bridge project to be able to get this essential, pedestrian crossing going. So just a comment for the record there. And then the questions I have are on that, if you can go back to the slide about North First again. Is that actually a structure? Did you call it an abutment that we're on the Main Street North First Junction right there? Is that actually gonna be a physical structure that blocks traffic? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it basically just looks like a widened sidewalk.
Okay,
And so it's just, basically just a concrete slab that sticks out with curb and gutter around it.
okay. And maybe some like it's clearly visible and
Right.
protective and limiting. Great. That certainly in favor of that. And I think, with great respect, of course, to our more expert around truck driving, I do like the idea of a non-truck route on that street, the amount of pedestrian traffic on it already beyond adding this pathway. It strikes me as not a safe place, for truck traffic. When you look at the design of Second Street, the width, the speed, the traffic light already, Second Street makes more sense to me for truck traffic. And I guess it's a broad question that if we're waiting on that crossing for a bridge redesign, what's the sequence there of any action items? We're waiting to talk about flood mitigation, if it talks about raising the bridge, like what's next?
Yeah, Regine can speak to that.
In the contract for this TAP grant, we had a pop-up study proposed, but since YDOT didn't approve any of those, we went ahead and finished that area as a feasibility study. So we have a report that we can use for future designs or future grants or future discussions with YDOT, but we don't have any actionable items off of this TAP grant.
Okay.
So no construction.
Okay, that's helpful. And then I recall that, Mr. Mayor, one last question, if I may. If we can go back to the overview map too, when we were talking about Railroad and Eugene versus that new subdivision. The sequencing here might be totally off too, but did you consider when those sidewalks go in for that new subdivision? Looks like on Riverwood Drive, likely using that system instead of investing in a pretty large detour down in Eugene and then up Railroad when we will eventually have construction in that subdivision that we could use as a pathway too. How was that thought through?
We did think about that. The challenge is, until that subdivision is built, that it's really tough to build a sidewalk and then try to develop the subdivision. It's a little bit backwards. But we did think about that. And so by going down Eugene and up Railroad, all we're doing is buying a handful of signs. And then we're doing a very short section of and that's why we picked just gravel for the section that's a 2-track road, so that we weren't spending a lot of dollars that that potentially may have a relatively short lifespan.
Okay, that's
that
helpful to hear.
reason.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Brad.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Hahn, just a minute.
Oh.
Who's gonna be in charge of maintaining this thing? Snow removal, cleaning, weeding, all that. Is this on the city?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So
Councilman White.
back to the First Street crossing, I echo the sentiments that Councilmember Stubble had about we being caught in the middle. I mean, could we do anything in the interim as simple as what we've probably all seen other places? A little bucket full of reflective flags on either side of it to help make pedestrian crossing a little more visible for those that choose to use it. Because it seems like YDOT won't allow anything else other than the bridge, but yet we're still gonna have people going across. And with the majority of that happening, at least in half of the year being in twilight or dark, it sure would be nice to offer something. And that, would something like that be at all feasible?
To date, everything we have proposed to YDOT was a no. So it's something that we're just going to have to keep trying. And that's why we produced this report as a feasibility study and a future pop-up study, you know, whatever else we can do to keep that conversation going.
I mean, do we need YDOT permission to have reflective flags available?
The discussion still needs to be had.
Oh my gosh, okay. Well, let me just add on an extra heaping kudos for all the work if you're having to get to that level of detail. My goodness.
I will remind you that in our ADA upgrades to Maine that we did 2 years ago, YDOT purposely took out the handicap ramps in that area around First. So there are none that cross Main Street. They go across First Street this way and across South First, but they purposely removed everything that crossed Main Street in that area for handicap ramps. Again, in their mind, trying to discourage any traffic there, make them walk up to the Second Street light.
I do have a comment about that. So I can appreciate YDOT's perspective on that, unfortunately. What is the response, for instance, if we can't get a safe crossing at that section and just moved it to Second Street, meaning moving our pathway and access to the pathway from there? Is that included in this study at all?
So we did think about that. I mean, really, all you would be doing is changing some signs, which would be ignored, right? I mean, everybody right now, I mean, they're gonna take the shortest path. And so that, we talked about that we could designate any place else as the official crossing. We just felt like there'd be no compliance. Because they're coming up Barney Trail, which is over by Maverick. They're very unlikely to go all the way to Second Street to try to cross. They're just gonna dodge traffic like everybody does now.
So does everybody understand, like, Main Street is a highway, right? And the state owns from building to building. They even own the sidewalks. So adding stuff to that has to be approved by them as well. And taking out the ADA ramps, they probably did that for a safety reason. I mean, you don't need anybody trying to run the gauntlet in a wheelchair across there, you know, it's bad enough on foot. Unless they were to approve one of these crossings, I don't suggest you have a path that crosses right there, honestly. I mean, it's only a matter of time. Being a firefighter, we don't deal with a lot of people getting run over right there. But I mean, if you have a path there, it's liable to happen a little sooner than you want, you know?
Yeah, so the way it is now, the path doesn't cross Main Street. You know, Barney Trail ends on the south side. This path starts basically at the chamber. And so, yeah, it's discontinuous right now. And it will be until some kind of formal crossing can be determined.
Any other questions? None? Okay, Casey, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming in,
Thank you.
and we'll let you go, so. All right, next on the item is item C, discussion concerning potential suspension of the half-cent economic tax fund and the lift recommendations for the funding cycle. Sorry, I don't see anybody else here from Lyft. Did you? Is Marilyn on?
Yeah, Marilyn is on.
Can you hear us, Marilyn? There you are.
Yes, I sure can.
There you go. You're up.
Well, I guess I would just say, I want to thank the council for allowing us to be on the agenda. I know that, they were considering just suspending the program without continuing through this last quarter. But we felt the process was nearly complete and that you should have all the information that we had on the current round of applicants. So we went ahead and finished our pitch nights and recommendations, and they should have been made available to you by now. We kind of sped up the process to get it to you so that you would have all the information you needed as you're making this decision. Our next funding cycle would not be until February 1st. So if you do suspend the program, I feel it would be fair notice to do it going forward, but not do it going backward to the people who had already gone through the process.
Any questions? Councilman Larson?
Well, I guess I would just concur, when we had this last discussion, the tax had just been killed and I was, okay, let's just gather our toys and we're gonna leave our sandbox and go home. But I got to thinking about that, and I think that we owe these people that have put in the time and the effort to make these presentations. I think that we own that opportunity. So I would say, let's go ahead with it.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I concur 100% too. I was, very similar last time, thinking like, okay, do we have the time to give notice? We clearly did not have the time to give notice to applicants in this quarter. So I'm in favor, and we will, vote on this down in the regular session of considering these 3 applications for this quarter and for funding. But Mayor, I am in favor, and knowing this discussion point, then we suspend the LIFT program for the business and organization grants. I think the agenda is a little confusing about it's on the regular session agenda.
It's
Where
on
we
the
talk about,
regular session.
suspending the distribution of the funds. I'm not in favor of that. I am in favor after this quarter of thanking the LIFT committee with as much gratitude, so much gratitude, and suspending that distribution of grants after this quarter.
Go ahead, Councilman.
What would you suggest we do with the money that comes in off the taxes? Give it to the airport?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may.
You may.
Yeah, it's a great question, Councilman Hahn. I think we're going to learn quite a bit later tonight from a couple of presentations, WRTA and FAST, and that we will then be able to make that decision about the money we'll keep gathering. Shari, if I may, I'm going to pull up what you provided to me about the collections. Was that in the drive?
Yeah. Got that late to the drive.
Yeah, great. So we can see what we have in hand, which is about $500,000 now. And then what we'll continue to collect through March until the tax is no longer collected. I'm sorry, April 1st, is that correct? And that would equal, not considering we might give away this quarter, about $990,000. So, Councilman Hahn, I think, yeah, I won't be glib. I'm leaning heavily towards we consider the grants this quarter, make some distributions, suspend the grant giving program, and then consider distributing some of the funds to WRTA for the senior buses, for the WRTA buses, and also to FAST for the transportation, as frankly, in my view, totally critical economic development services for our county and town.
Okay. Anybody else? We'll wait till the next meeting comes up. or-
I do have a
Go
question,
ahead.
just where we're at. I am a little bit concerned just with the wording of the half-cent economic tax that was passed 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Are we're not obligated to that? I guess this question's for Adam, to the language to that, we are.
It is at the discretion of the governing body awarded the funds of how to use it for economic development.
And I don't have that language, that ballot language in front of me, and I know we've talked about that before. I just would And I can look that up too, but that's my only hesitation, with holding off and continuing forward in the path that we've gone down these last 4 years. So I need to have some consideration for that for myself. But that's something that
Mayor, I do have that ballot language in front of me if you would like me to read it.
I would love that. Yes,
Go ahead,
please.
Reggie.
I won't read the intro part, but I will, where it gets to distributions, it says, economic development shall be defined as any project that retains or increases employment and or results in a net gain of money into the community. 30% of the net proceeds of the tax shall be used to support transportation infrastructure, such as commercial air service and ground transportation. The remaining 70% will be allocated to the county and 6 municipalities based on population to manage and invest in economic development projects of their choosing. Economic development projects on the Wind River Indian Reservation are eligible for county allocation.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd say thank you for this and having the ballot language. And I would say that's part of a future discussion. I think at hand right now is about awarding this quarter. And I think we're in agreement for that. I sit corrected in my perspective on that. And I would urge us to move to the next topic on our work session agenda and come back to this when it's on our business session.
I think the discussion is, we're discussing what our intention is. I'm just pulling up concerning the potential suspension of the half-cent economic funds
Right.
and lift recommendations for the funding cycle. But our discussion is based on whether or not we're willing to suspend. So that's where the ballot language for me comes into play, which is on our agenda.
Okay. Anything else, Marilyn?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm just here in case you have any questions on this quarter's applicants.
Okay, hang on. So back to you later. All righty. Next on our agenda item is Tim Nichols from WRTA funding discussion. Tim? I think I've seen these before, but I'll take them anyway. He'll explain it to you. Thanks for all the reading, Tim.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Those members of the public also present, for the opportunity to discuss or have a discussion, I guess, this evening. As mentioned, Tim Nichols, Director of the Wind River Transportation Authority. But more importantly, and I think in context of this conversation, a community member that's heavily invested in the future of Fremont County. I want to make it clear from the outset of at least this initial, my initial comments, that my purpose here tonight is not necessarily to be confrontational or single out anyone in the council, instead to speak to the broader community at this opportunity as their representatives. My message is intended to reflect many shared concerns, hopes, responsibilities we all hold for people in Fremont County. This is about fostering an understanding and finding solutions that will benefit everyone who call our community home. So to be clear, I'm asking for a portion of the remaining 0.5% funds before those dollars are spent in a manner that further frustrates the very constituency that we're here to serve. Since returning home to Fremont County, I've worked diligently to help WRTA meet an ever-growing expectations of the Federal Transportation Administration. It's been a challenge, but one that myself and the team have embraced because we genuinely believe in the power of public transportation to transform lives and communities. I brought with me a decade of experience in this industry, in an industry that is widely respected for its undeniable contributions to society. Yet I find it continuously surprising that here the service is often viewed as non-essential, a convenience that is perceived more as a burdensome budget line. Over the past year, WRTA has worked tirelessly to adapt and improve its service offerings. We've restored connections to thousands of riders, reopened opportunities for businesses, and provided access to healthcare, education, and jobs. And yet, I continue to find myself standing in situations like these, having to justify why public transportation is worth an investment. It's hard not to feel disheartened when I look around at the staff who joined me tonight. On a daily basis, staff who worked without access to the basic benefit of health insurance, and the riders who rely on us to connect them to life's essentials. These are lives immeasurably improved by the services we provide. Yet we're continuously forced to defend the value of it. For those who diminish or create doubt in an impact of public transportation, we hear and see you. We see the comments on social media, we hear the skepticism in meetings, and we recognize the dismissive narratives that attempt to undervalue public transit's work. But I want to be clear, while we see you, I choose and we choose to dismiss that input. Not out of disrespect of any kind, but because it is unequivocally false and contradicted by undeniable evidence. Tonight, I brought with me a substantial stack of studies, economic development studies, health benefit studies, just a fraction of the total evidence that's available now before you. Some of them, just a fraction. We could have gone longer. That provide the undeniable contribution that public transit makes to economic stability, community health, and social equity. For every dollar invested in public transportation, it generates approximately $4 in economic return per a study conducted by the American Public Transportation Association. According to another study published in the Journal of Community Health, lack of transportation contributes to 3.6 million missed medical appointments annually in the United States. Providing adequate integrated public transportation can reduce these by up to 50%. Rural households spend about 7 more than their household budgets than transportation in urban households, on transportation than urban households. The Rural Health Information Hub notes that reliable public transportation reduces social isolation among rural elderly populations by 25%, decreasing the risk of depression and other mental health issues. These are not hypothetical claims. They're grounded in data, research, and real-world results from communities exactly like ours. If these facts continue to be denied or dismissed, I submit to you that it is in fact their responsibility or your responsibility to justify to me with credible evidence why these findings do not apply to Fremont County, Wyoming. Explain why the ability to get to work, to access healthcare, or to pursue education is a burden on the taxpayer rather than a benefit to the community as a whole. Public transportation is a lifeline, plain and simple. It creates opportunities, strengthens the local economy, ensures that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, has a means to participate in the community. When someone says public transit doesn't matter or posts on Facebook, or somehow doesn't have a place in rural Wyoming, or posted on Facebook, I myself think of the mother who can now actually get to work to afford to feed her family. I think of the senior who can now reliably access their medical appointments. And I continue to think of the student who pursues an education that will help build a brighter future right here in Fremont County. These stories aren't unique. They are the backbone of what we do. Now, as I speak, I ask you to imagine the records, reports, and fiscal documentation that are required to operate a service of this level. We entertain the idea tonight to bring these documents with us. A compilation so extensive that it consumed the entirety of our conference table, stacked many layers thick. This is the reality of public transportation and a public transit system in Fremont County. Every document reflects a grant application, regulatory reporting, funding audits, or a detailed plan demanded by oversight agencies. It represents the heavy burden of compliance placed on WRTA and other public transit providers in Fremont County. an extraordinary effort required just to sustain what we currently have. Yet, despite the overwhelming demands, we show up every day. We meet the challenges and we innovate where we can, and we continue to provide that lifeline for thousands of people who depend on us. Council members, let me add just another layer to this reality that I'm outlining. Beyond the administrative burden, consider the operational backbone of WRTA, that is WRTA and Wind River Transportation Authority. Just over 19,000 labor hours of annual logistic scheduling are performed with one individual and a couple part-time staff, a single operation manager and 2 part-time dispatchers. A cumulative total equivalent to 9 years of full-time work compressed into a single year. Imagine the weight of a decade's worth of planning, coordination, and decision-making. The extraordinary effort is not just a testament to their dedication, but a stark reminder of the immense strain on our team endured to keep the service running for this community. The challenge we face, and I want to be extremely clear in this, the challenges that WRTA faced even prior to my arrival was not due to any administrative mismanagement nor operational inefficiencies. They stemmed from years and years and decades of inadequate funding and unrealistic expectations placed on a service that was never meant to be self-sustaining. For years, WRTA has operated on the bare minimum, stretching every single dollar to cover essentials needed to keep the buses running. I want to highlight again that these full-time staff do not carry health insurance benefits. We have watched as the conveniences of modern software, tools, and resources that could enhance our operations have passed the department by, unattainable due to funding limitations. While other organizations have been able to adopt systems and streamline scheduling, improve rider experiences, or optimize fleet management, we have had to make do without, forced to focus solely on survival rather than progress. WRTA is neither a for-profit nor nonprofit, but exists as a people-driven public service entity, ensuring that nobody is left behind simply because they lack transportation. Every decision we make, every route we plan, and every service we provide is designed with people in mind. Our goal is not profit, it is impact. We exist to create opportunities for individuals to strengthen the fabric of our community. Public transit is more than moving people from one place to another. It's about empowering them to reach their fullest potential and fostering equity, inclusion, and growth right here in Fremont County. The mission is what drives us every day, even as we face significant challenges and funding shortfalls. It's what keeps our team committed to the thousands of riders who rely on the system. And it is why we are here tonight asking for your support to ensure that this vital service continues. Its value lies in the lives that it touches and the opportunities it creates and the stability it provides. Yet, even with this overwhelming burden of compliance and operations, we continue to show up, provide a lifeline for thousands in our community. For those who still deny the impact of public transportation, even after reviewing the book I've just handed you, I invite you to come forward, take up the stack of studies and research that I've provided, and explain why these facts do not actually apply here in Fremont County. Explain to the thousands of riders who depend on this service every single day and every year why their needs are a burden rather than a benefit to the community. Make no mistake, the voters repealed the 0.5% sales tax because there was a disconnect between the government and the people. Spending decisions were made without fully considering how they would be perceived by the taxpayer. And the frustration ultimately led to the repeal of our critical funding source. Air service, ground transportation, and potential funding for ambulance services were strapped to a failed funding source, and now left to manage with the underfunding and unrealistic expectations of the significant shortfall. If we continue to undervalue public transportation, and I highlight that it is not just WRTA, there are 7 public transit entities located in Fremont County. In the role that it supports in a thriving community, the repercussions will be profound. The gaps of equity will grow wider, the opportunities will diminish, and the people who rely on these services will be left behind. Public transit was never designed to be self-sustaining, and it shouldn't have to be because it is a people-focused service. Mayor, members of the council, While the stacks and boxes of papers are not physically here with me tonight, their presence is still felt in the work they represent. It is a testament to the dedication, the resilience, and the commitment of the people who ensure that this service operates every single day. Behind every report, every schedule, and every route is a team working tirelessly to meet the needs of the community with limited resources and unwavering determination. The remaining 0.5% sales tax funds provide an opportunity, a chance to bridge the gap and invest in services that touch lives, create opportunities, and build equity across Fremont County. These funds can serve as a foundation for sustainable growth, ensuring that public transit remains reliable and transformative resource for everyone in the community. Your leadership and vision are critical to making this happen. By prioritizing this investment or this project of your choosing, you have the power to not only support a vital public service, but to also rebuild the trust with the people of Fremont County, showing them that their voices matter and their future is a shared priority. I thank you for indulging my comments and would be more than happy to stand for any questions you might have now.
Questions?
I do have one,
Go ahead.
maybe two.
Thoughts? Maybe
Thank
two.
you for your comments. I think that it's important to know, and WRTA has been in existence, when did-
1996.
Thank you. It's served for a long time in our community. Do you know how it was funded prior? Where was the majority of the funding coming from prior to the 0.5 cent?
That's an excellent question. For years, and I presented on this a while back, WRTA employed what's called contracts for service to generate revenue in order to match their local grants. Over time, these contracts for service have to be identified as an allowable contract of service by the Federal Transportation Administration. Over time, and it was actually in 2019, when we went through an audit, when we were identified as some of those contracts were not allowable anymore due to regulatory change, a substantial, over $100,000 worth of our funding sources dried up overnight, prompting the Hail Mary that became public transit's involvement, or WRTA specifically, is involvement in the 0.5% sales tax.
And then, thank you for very detailed budget as well as this information that we can sift through, not tonight, obviously, but at our leisure. You have here a bridge total of $558,445.73. That's the total to the end of FY 27.
That is correct.
And that is not just the city of Lander's responsibility or potential contribution, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, you may. Go ahead. Councilman Stool.
Thanks, Mr. Nichols. How much do you want from us? I'll be blunt.
As much as you're willing to give.
All right. And you don't have commitments, if I may, Mr. Mayor, from City of Riverton, county, other tax collectors?
That is correct.
I was at a county commissioner meeting the other day and they handed off to see the city of Lander and city of Riverton are going to do to step up.
Well, let's see
So
the
they
leads.
will.
Let's do first.
But that's what it was. I just want to let people know, since I'm talking, is I talked to the people that ride this bus, and without the bus transportation, they couldn't go to work back and forth from Riverton Lander or vice versa. I see them gonna get on the bus here. Their wages won't let them. The gas is so expensive. And to buy a car right now, they don't have it. So I see them walking up here every morning, 5:30 in the morning, getting on the WRTA bus and going to Riverton. We have college kids that ride that bus, especially in the wintertime, that helps transport them back and forth from home to school. So it's more of the lower, I'm gonna say, income people that need this bus, and that's who rides that bus are the people that need it. And I don't know how many riderships we have a year. I hope it's in that stack, but I was hoping you could just give me the number.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So I also want to highlight that pre-COVID, WRTA was transporting between 70 and 80,000 passengers per year. Post-COVID, as the national statistics trend is about 45 to 50% of that. In FY 23, we transported 36,097 passengers. Due to additional regulatory changes, our ridership numbers diminished slightly. and are now sitting around 28,000. So now what we do with that is we assess the data we have to identify the need and move services where they're needed.
Thank you, Tim. Councilman Hahn?
Yeah, thank you. That was an awesome presentation. I don't understand why we act like this is just a free for all. I think we should stick to the way it was on the ballot. It was passed as 20% to the airport, 10% to WRTA, and the rest goes to the public. That's what passed the first time, and I don't understand why we don't stick with what passed on the ballot.
Mayor, if I may. Councilman Hahn, I disagree with your interpretation of the ballot language. I do think that we have the discretion to grant that 70% to the economic development projects of our choosing. That's a direct quote. The ballot doesn't say it goes to the public the way that you just characterized it.
Economic development, sorry.
Right. No, perfect. Yep. And I think that this economic development is defined by the ballot language to incorporate these essential transportation services. It says here, the purpose of this tax is for economic development, and then it continues with the distributions of the 30% to transportation infrastructure, thereby economic development is an umbrella. The ballot has approved that this transportation is under the economic development umbrella. So we've done this in the past. I strongly oppose any interpretation that we are going outside of the bounds of the ballot and the voters approved, if we consider this
Did
funding.
we not give the airport an extra 141,000?
We did, and I think that's
Okay.
because we had the discretion to do so, Mr. Mayor, for me.
Yes. Well, we did, and I think this is all part of the problem on why this didn't pass again. Because it's in our hands to distribute money that isn't ours, really. You know, it was kind of put in there. I think a lot of people misunderstood the ballot when, you know, it first came out and they voted for it. I'm fully in for WRTA. I agree. You guys do a great job. You help many people. I just think, you know, we've made mistakes in the past and look where it's got us, you know?
Okay.
I just would like to respond to, I can appreciate that. And I would also appreciate the reading of the ballot because I do think it allows for our discretion and some flexibility within that funding. And that makes me more comfortable with how we proceed from here. And I think you're right. We did make a lot of mistakes and we learned from it. And unfortunately now as a result, here we are. So now we just got to make sure the decisions that we make are wise every time.
Anybody else, Misty?
I'd echo that I fully appreciate what having WRTA as well as assisting our senior centers in funding, you know, likewise, an ADA van is $80,000+ and I know Lander Senior Center's been able to take advantage of this, and that's a needed service all around. So very appreciative of what you're doing and want to see it continue. It's very much needed in our big wide county.
Any other questions for Tim?
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thinking of the sequencing and next steps as always. So we have projections of what we'll collect, but we don't know what we'll collect in the, for the tax collections end, which would be the end of March 2025. So is it appropriate, Mr. Nichols, for us to find out what we actually have in hand and then consider a distribution if the council so votes to make a distribution in WRTA, which I would be 100% supportive. Is that okay timing for you?
Yeah, Mayor,
Go ahead.
members of the council.
Mhm.
I've outlined in your materials, our funding will run out somewhere in April, May of FY '26. So according to the timeline, yes, I would say that would be a sufficient time.
Thank you. We won't leave you waiting much. I hope. Excuse me, April of 2026. Okay, yeah, that's right. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, no more further questions. Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Fast Airport, you're up. You guys state your name for us, though. Yeah.
Your Honor, members of the council, my name's Kevin Kershiznik with FAST, and with me today is Kyle Butterfield, also with FAST, handing out a presentation to you that we'll go through. There's a ton of additional supporting information, which we can send to you digitally, unless you like a paper copy, it's your discretion. But we'd like to go through this presentation for a few minutes.
Thank you, Kevin. Your Honor, if I may, I said this at the county commission meeting last week, and I'd just like to take a moment, and I hope you'll indulge me, but I think it's appropriate to say that we have so many good people in Fremont County. I look at Mr. Nichols and the information that he's compiled and the way that he is representing our community and the service he's providing. And I'm very impressed with him. I was very impressed with Mr. Michaud when he had that position, and so many other people that we have in our county. And I think we're very fortunate in Fremont County for the talent that we have and the people that care about our community and try and make a difference. And I hear that Mr. Nichols came from Lander, so good job.
He's a Lander boy.
We appreciate the time this evening and the invitation to speak to you. We also know that you have a full agenda. I look in the audience and it's great to see our youth that are here, and I like that they're engaging in the civic process, and I hope this is a good opportunity for them. But Kevin, I also know that you have a lot of business tonight, and so what we will try to do this evening is hit a few high notes, but we also extend an invitation that you can contact us, email us, call us. Quite frankly, we would love to have in-person meetings with any of you to provide additional information or answer questions as you may have them. As representatives of the Fremont Air Service team, naturally, we're here to talk about commercial air service. And I think it's appropriate also to take a moment and look at our performance and see that we're providing a valuable service to our community, one that Lander has definitely benefited from. We appreciate the number of riders that come from the entire county, but Lander contributes quite a bit. There are a number of stakeholders in your community that rely on connectivity to the National Transportation Network. And I'm very pleased that the service that is offered at Central Wyoming Regional Airport allows the community members in Lander, in Riverton, on the reservation, and Fremont County on the whole to get where they need to go, to have the quality of life options that they want in our area, and also to support the businesses that operate in Fremont County. Economic development is tied to transportation, and we can provide information as we have in the past about the economic impact of commercial air servicing and that connectivity for Fremont County. We appreciate your support through the years. Lander has been a wonderful stakeholder as we have addressed commercial air service connectivity. We've had it for a long time, and we appreciate that from your community and from you as a governing body, whether it was standing up service with Denver Air Connection or transitioning to service with SkyWest Airlines, and to now seeing record numbers of passengers leaving and entering Fremont County through our commercial service airport. I will soon have the numbers for the month of November, but through October, we had over 17,000 passengers leave our airport. And that's a number that we hadn't seen in over 20 years. And we still have several other months to account for. So the people are using their commercial service airport, and it's providing service for quality of life and economic development. And again, we appreciate the valued partnership that we have always had through the years with you. With that preamble, and you do see in your packet a graph that does show at least 20 plus years of performance. And that again highlights some of the records that we're seeing in Fremont County right now. But I would like to defer to my colleague, Mr. Kershiznik, to cover the rest of the presentation, but we do stand for questions from you as we go through that.
Thank you, Kyle. Your Honor, members of the council, on page 3, we just put that in there to give you a little bit of history. I think most of you are aware of that, how the program works. It's a CPA, SkyWest is the operator, et cetera. One thing I want to point out is we are in the 6th year of a potential 10-year contract with SkyWest, which comes into play when we start looking at some of the numbers and what the future costs may be for us as citizens of Fremont County. Slide 4, that's the MRG. And again, that's what we talked about before. This is the cost of the service, which YDOT is negotiating with SkyWest. They tell us what that is. We have the emplanements, which is the revenue side. Anything that's left over is the minimum revenue guarantee. So in the numbers you're going to see today, we're going to talk about budget numbers. Not going to talk best case, worst case, because there's a lot of variables in there. Just want to give you some rough numbers. So the things we've been asked for from the county, from the governing bodies, from the public as a whole is, what does your financial runway look like? How much money do you have to continue to provide air service? So we put this together as an outline to show you what that looks like. So on page 5, you have this is the amount of money that's sitting in the account, a little over 2.3 million for air service. With the continued collections through the end of March, we'll see another 480, and that's based on previous years and what we project going forward. The cost of that service at budget is going to be 1.3, leaving us 1.5 at the end of fiscal 25, which is June of 2025. Going into fiscal year 26, you can see there will be no more collections. The estimated expense for that at budget is 1.7 mil. So at the end of the year, we'd be short about 200,000. So we anticipate running out of funds sometime in the spring of 2026 for commercial air service. As that stands, the option, if that's the case, what we do is we go to SkyWest, say, will you fly at risk? We've done that before. They said, no, thanks. We prefer not to. We want the MRG. So FAST has got together and said, what are our options to provide additional funding, long-term funding sources? And as you can see on page 6, I believe it is, it's going slide 6, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Yeah, yep, page 3, top of page 3, slide 6, or bottom slide 6. So, what we'd be looking at is asking you to consider the allocation of some of the remaining half-cent monies to go to extend this runway, to make it a little bit larger, a little bit longer, so that we can provide this service. If you look at the options here on bottom of page 3, thank you. You can see the options. One thing is we would either come back to the councils, the county, et cetera, and ask for general fund allocations to cover this like it was previously funded, is the one option. The other one is to look at some of these others. Can we do something at the state level? Is there a philanthropist that's willing to put forth an endowment? Those things not highly probable, but possible. Property tax, could do a transportation district, which is an option, but that's not going to give us enough funds to cover what we see for the MRG. The half-cent, which could be a quarter-cent, would be about 2.2 million per annum. And that would cover it going forward. If you work through the mechanics on that from a schedule perspective, is that if it went in the general election of 26, right, if it passed at that point, then we would have to be able to have the funds in place. We wouldn't start collecting till April 1 of 27. Wouldn't see any allocation or distribution from the state until likely June of 27. So we're looking at another year from this model that we'd have to fund in order to keep that in place if we chose to go that route. And per annum, looking at about $2 million. So that's the nut that we have to crack. We have to find a way of making that happen. Looking at a bunch of options. The first thing we wanted to do is to make sure we had that runway through year 2, next fiscal year. And that would be by using some of the allocation of that 70% funds to support commercial air service going forward. The commercial air service, like Mr. Butterfield had said, is a great economic boost for our community. YDOT had an independent third party do a study. Economic impacts $21 million per annum. It's huge. As an economic developer, I look at that and say, how do we make that up if we don't have commercial air service. Presently, I do not have an answer to that. We continue to look and search for ways of doing that. The best way, in my opinion, is to maintain air service, to ensure we have that for the citizens of our community, for the businesses. If I take you back when we first started, and we started the whole sales tax initiative to provide longer term funding option for commercial air service. And at that time, Brunton was pulling out. They laid off 15 to 30 administrative people. Pertec, familiar with them, they had to lay off 10 to 15 professionals at that time because we didn't have reliable commercial air service. And it was a period of time where it's very difficult to recruit companies, to retain companies, and to grow companies. So from a private business perspective, absolutely critical. Also from the personal quality of life side, we need to have that. I've flown out quite a bit recently, and every time I land, I see people meet family members, excited, hugging, just having a great time. And I'm sitting there in the back of my mind thinking, well, do they realize that this may not be an option for them a year and a half, 2 years down the road? So it's very mixed emotions when I land. So that's why we're here today, to ask for your consideration to continue to help fund this going forward.
Yeah, questions?
I do.
Councilman
I'm
Cox?
full of questions tonight.
No, you're fine.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So just a couple of questions in reference to the MRG. So I have been flying also quite a bit lately. And one thing that I'm noticing is that there's no parking available in the parking lot because there's so many passengers parked, waiting to return, but that's increased in the last 4 months, substantially more traffic. But in reference to the MRG, you know, I'm finding that it's not ever decreasing. And we have a considerable amount of more passengers. Employments are higher. We're hearing record numbers. Are those things ever really taken into consideration when they are calculating the MRG? That's the first part of that question. The second part is, are we also, when they're doing the collection of data and reporting numbers out, are we also included in with Rock Springs, Sheridan, Gillette with our MRG totals? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
You both can answer half,
Yeah.
either one, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
Councilwoman, I'll attempt to address that question. And then obviously as Mr. Krasiznik has other thoughts, he can add additional comments as well. As it relates to the parking lot, I think it's wonderful news that it's full. That again shows that people are using the air service, and it shows me there's a market for it. There's a need in our community. Yes, we have had record levels of ridership and support, but we're also seeing an increased cost as it relates to providing air service. And again, I think there would be a wonderful opportunity to meet with each of you to answer questions as it relates to the mechanics of air service, how the MRG is calculated, and go over the budget v actuals as it relates to how we project and how we pay. As we project, we look at a budget every single contract year that's based on a number of variables. The first of which is the block hour cost related to air service. Fuel cost is then also taken into account. So those are the more expense variables of the MRG, to simplify it. And then we look at the number of passengers and then also the ticket average or the fare as it's generating revenue per seat. When we look at the block hour specifically, for fiscal year 25, we're paying a block hour rate of $4,343. In fiscal year 24, that rate was $3,428. When we started this project in fiscal year 20, the block hour rate was $2,373. So the cost to receive air service in our rural market has increased. While we've had a record number of ridership, the cost is higher as well. One thing that we look at regularly with the state of Wyoming, because remember, the state is paying 60% of this bill, is how much are we getting per seat and how much are we filling the plane? When we looked at the first quarter of fiscal year 25, so July through September, we noticed that the average fare was lower than what we had projected, which our riders loved, but had an impact on the MRG. So we saw a lower average fare, but we saw a higher number of riders than expected. What that did is, through the first quarter of fiscal year 25, costs related to the commercial air service exceeded the budget projection by about $50,000. When we look at the total cost for commercial air service for that first quarter, it was over $1 million. State took 600,000 of that. We had to pay 400,000 of that. To contrast that with other years, I'd love to put that in perspective. When we look at the total amount for the minimum revenue guarantee paid in fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 respectively, it was 878,000 and 1.5 million total. We took 40% of that. Compare that to the first quarter of this fiscal year of $1 million. So I celebrate that we're using our airport, but I'm also very realistic that in order to provide that service, we have to cover the cost obligation. And that is related to the higher block hour rate. I think FAST will do everything that it can to preserve and maintain air service in this community so long as our community wants it. Why we're coming to you is you have an opportunity now, to use a bad analogy, is to look at your last $100. I know if I have $100 left in my wallet, I think very carefully at how I'm going to use that $100 bill. Well, right now you have a certain amount of funds that you will generate for the 0.5%, and it's your last $100. And we're asking that you consider how you divvy that $100 very carefully. And we think that transportation, connectivity to the National Transportation Network is valuable and provides that economic development boon. And we hope that you consider that now as you have that last $100 to consider. Because as Kevin laid out the runway, in order for us to maintain air service, when the funds run out, we will probably come to you and ask for your support. And I imagine you would have to look at your general fund and consider first, if it's a priority for this governing body. Second, if it's something that you can even feasibly fund. And I don't know what your general fund looks like, but right now you have the $100 that you can divvy out and prioritize. And again, forgive the simplified analogy, but it makes sense in my mind.
Kevin, you have anything else? Questions? Questions?
Mayor, if
Councilman
I'm,
Stoll?
I'll make a comment, not a question, but thank you, gentlemen. Super informative as always. I mean, I feel like it's second verse, same as the first here for me, that you would have my support for us to consider some distribution from their remaining collections. I think it makes sense to wait. Somebody correct me if you have a different idea here until we actually have that money in hand, and then we can determine the allocation between the folks who have come into request so far, and then I don't know if anybody else is going to come up the next quarter, but weighing that sometime this spring. And then it begs a whole host of other questions that we can address perhaps in a smaller session. But do we make that distribution now? Do we hold that in an interest-bearing account? Do we make it later? So we don't need to go down those roads now, but thank you. And certainly you have my support as we go forward.
Anybody else? Nope. Gentlemen, thank you for giving up your evening. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. There's nothing else on the work session. I'm gonna adjourn the work session. And if you, work session's adjourned. If you need to run to the restroom, council, or get a glass of water, before we start the next one. Out of my chair.
Test, test.
I think they're leaving.
I mean, what do we do the four lift conversations first? Because the rest of it, like, so we do FGHI and ABCD. FGHI. And
We have to amend anyway to add the
Yeah.
executive session. We could amend
Do we really? You have FTH at the beginning of new business. And then the other stuff is all pretty procedure. Let them go. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty good.
We still need to get together. We got a lot of
They've had-
discussions to make.
Take a motion.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you. Gonna be tough. I feel. It's just that it's crazy. I just don't know what's gonna happen in 2026. I'm worried about where our budget's gonna go. With the president. The country.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just crazy. So we can do. Thank you. Going to call the meeting to order. This is a regular council meeting. So we'll move forward. Adam, do we need to say the pledge again?
No.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
But we probably do need to
Okay.
roll call.
Roll call, nobody snuck out.
Roll call, yeah.
Yep.
Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember White. Present. Councilmember Dan Hahn. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Dan Hahn is not present. Council President Cox. Present. Councilmember Stubble.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Josh Hahn.
I'm still here.
Okay. And Mayor Richardson.
Yeah, we're here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. We're moving on to the agenda before we approve the agenda.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to have a motion to amend the agenda on 3 items. One would be number 5, letter A. It reads approve first. We need to strike first. And then add approve the second reading of ordinance 225 to that language. Just an error there. And then I am requesting that we move on item number 6, F, G, and H, that we move the lift recommendations up to the beginning of the agenda after the approval of the agenda. We have a great group of young citizens here, but there is bedtime in school and all that sort of thing. Yes, yes,
Think our
yes.
bedtime before theirs, but.
And then, that's right. And then I would also move that we add an executive session after 6, so we could just say 6A or
Point of order.
7.
We can't have an executive session because it wasn't properly advertised.
Perfect.
So there will be no executive session
So
that
we
can
don't
be
need to add
amended
that.
on the ad agenda.
Thank you,
We'll-
Adam.
We'll advertise it for December 10th and have it on December 10th.
Okay, great. So just those 2 amendments to the agenda.
Second.
Move to approve, yeah. He's got it.
He was on it.
Okay, any other changes or corrections?
That's it.
Since there is none, call for the question, Councilman Larson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, first
Now,
one,
Mr. Mayor, now you have to approve the agenda as amended.
I just did, didn't I? Oh,
No,
that's
we-
right.
Motion to,
It's late.
Mayor,
Need to approve the agenda as amended.
so moved.
And get a second, got a motion by Councilwoman Stubble, second by Councilman Larson to approve the agenda as amended. Call for the question, Councilman Jehan.
Yes.
Yes.
yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. We'll move on to public. Oh, we're moving them clear to the front. All right. We're moving to item F. We moved it up. Approval of lift recommendations for the Lander Girls Softball League Complex improvements. Can I get a? You want to have discussion first?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I'd like to say, like, I was looking over all this and they actually submitted a breakdown of everything they want to do with the money. I think this is one of the best ones we've seen, and this actually, to me, is economic development. This is what in my mind, I think it should be. I think this is an excellent one.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies, for all that time.
All right,
Mayor, if I may?
yes, you may.
So,
Councilwoman
lots of
Stoll.
agreement there. Thank you so much for the application. It's an exciting proposal for sure. And certainly want to be in support of making some improvements to the fields, which clearly need them. But I will, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to propose that we table this specific application for these lift funds. I'm in support of some distribution here, but I feel like I want to know more because of the three stakeholders at play with these fields. So we have the softball association wanting, seeking grant money here to make improvements to the infrastructure. We have a lessee, which is the city of this property, and we have the landlord. Not use all the legal terms here, of the school district. And I feel like I don't know enough from the city and the school district as owner and lessee of the property, and where the improvements, the assessment of the improvements from city staff for these facilities, but also where the school district is willing to put in some improvement as well, what the city can provide. And I know these are conversations the softball league has had, so I just, in advance, thank you for your patience. I get it if you're frustrated because you've had these conversations, but I want the city council, if I can, and the staff to be part of those conversations in a more open way, because thinking about the amount of money we could put through this grant into these fields just begs for me the question of, but what about the city? What about the school district? And what do we know? I just don't know enough in that interplay, frankly, of where we could find some solutions. So Mayor, I don't want to table it for very long. I would hope we can make a work session in December to have that discussion with school district representative, Parks and Rec or Public Works representative, and the softball association as well, to hash this out and then come up at our next business session with making a funding allocation.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you, Mayor. So first off, I have to make a couple of comments that are personal. And that is in 2008, myself, along with a group of young ladies, the Lander Girls Softball Association made a pitch to the school district to approve softball as a high school sport, of which we were denied. And later, as it relates to Title IX, which I'm sure some of you girls are aware of, they implemented girls could wrestle, and that's how they supported girls softball. It was irritating, of course, at that time, and I think that part of it is I was an all-state softball player with, it's what I did. And I loved every minute of it. And what I can tell you is that since 2008, when we made that proposal, there has been no work done to those softball fields. And I do think there's some onus on the city as well as the school district. There's back stops that have cement, I don't know, probably 24 inches of exposed cement. That's very dangerous. That's just on the youngest girls softball field. We hosted a tournament here several years ago, which we raised approximately $10,000 in 2 days at the concession stand. And this is economic development. You're absolutely right. And the idea that we could host a state tournament, which we were never able to do because we didn't have enough fields, we didn't have lighting, we didn't have scoreboards. That field is a beautiful complex. And I will also say, we bought the batting cage, and the city workers ran it over. It cost us $6,800 of our $10,000 raised, and it got run over by snow plows or snow trucks, which never got replaced. I don't know if it has been since. You did? Okay, awesome. So that was really disheartening. So to see this, I'm all in, but I do also think that we need to table it so we can get some more buy-in from some other partners that they have to contribute as well. And I think, a great presentation. Thank you, Lyft, for the consideration, but we do need those other partners to step up as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think y'all have raised great points and obviously, I mean, what an incredible group of young athletes to have here. I'm a coach in another sport and I totally appreciate what's learned through athletic endeavors. And likewise have the concerns about the lack of shared responsibility among the different partners and also while I certainly want you all to have an appropriate place to play, I also want to make sure we can delineate wants from needs in this process and to what extent can some things be repaired rather than completely redone, especially with this being leased land by the city. And I think that's a concern we should have about how much we put into leased properties, especially as we look towards developing our own facilities at some point in the future for that. And again, this is a classic example of the deferred maintenance now coming up and biting us on the rear. And to me, it speaks to what Lance suggested earlier about having a facilities manager. We have a number of buildings and facilities that it's just not feasible to expect the folks who are renting it to know about construction and repair and ongoing maintenance. And we have I can't begin to calculate how many hundreds of thousands of dollars we have in these things. So it's making more and more sense to me that at some point when we consider that, this is part of that. It's easier to catch things early on than have to wait for full replacement. And this is a classic example of how we're seeing that. So I would support a motion to table this for a little further discussion and having all of our partners share in this.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
That being said, Missy, so we are part of, we're leasees on that property. And these girls are getting older daily, so if we table this, which, that's cool. Are we gonna have to wait for the city to cough up funds along with other people or I'm just trying to get a grasp on, what's the time frame and like, how does that work?
Yeah, I think that's a great conversation. I think in terms of tabling, we have to table it in response and state a specific meeting date for that. And I would hope at that point, we'd also have a better sense of what kinds of funds are required for like addressing things like the backstop or the parts of the fence that really need to be brought up to appropriate standards to make the field, a more functional place to be. And so for me, it's hard to say what that dollar amount would be without knowing what some of those estimates are for it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I
Yes.
think the big concern is that any money that the softball organization or the city puts into these properties becomes property of the school. So essentially, we're giving money to the school to maintain their facilities as opposed to going into city or even into their organization. And maybe that's what we want to do. Maybe that's what this organization wants to do, is to give this money to the fields to make them better, and the school's happy with that. And if that's what everybody wants, then that's fine. But I think that that's the biggest concern here is if we put in a new new ball fields, new backstops, whatever, that becomes the property of the school because that's who we lease it from. So if that lease ends between the city and the school, whatever's there reverts to the school. And I think that's what I'm hearing the concern might be. And that's certainly something that maybe we need to have a discussion with the school and with all three players involved, them, city, and the school, to be able to know exactly if they're going to be ponying up anything. If not, then how you guys want to proceed. If you do table it, then you do have to state a specific date to table it to, and that would be the next meeting, which would be December. And there's only one meeting in December.
Mayor, if I may. Thank you, thanks Adam for the additional context. I mean, it's exactly why I want us to have this three stakeholder, which uses a metaphor, we say player, because we were talking about pitches and players, conversation. So here's my proposal. Our next business meeting, when we could vote on the allocation of the lift funds for the softball league is on December 10th. I feel doubtful with the holiday and no work session in between now and then that we would be able to have that work session conversation. So my proposal, and I can make this as a motion if you'd like, Mayor, is that we schedule a work session on December 17th with this topic to iron this out, and then we table this decision until our regular session in January, which is the 14th. Which is too far out. I hate that, but like, it's given how we need to get work sessions in here.
That's a motion.
I'll make it that way. So I move that we table the lift recommendation of funding for the Lander Girls Softball League complex improvements until January 14th with the intention that we have a work session with the school district, Lander Softball League representatives and the city staff on December 17th.
Get a second.
Is that appropriate?
I'd second that.
Got a motion by Councilman Stubble, second by Councilman Larson. Any other questions?
Just a quick question of clarification before we vote. Would delaying it till January, Marilyn, this would be for you, put the softball association behind schedule for any construction that would need to be done that you're aware of?
I can tell you that it looks like there's a lot of board members from the softball league there. And I can also tell you, if you give us a list of what you need, they will have it for you tomorrow. So I'm not sure there's a specific time frame, but the board president, I think, could answer that question, yes or no?
Thank you.
No, that would not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, got a motion and a second to table it. Gonna call for the question? Councilman Hahn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Item G, approve lift recommendation for funds for an arcade. Yeah, you guys, you girls, I know you got school tomorrow. You probably want to go home, not listen to us old fuddy duddies, do you? Oh, you like it?
I mean, seriously.
No school tomorrow, is there? Nope, there's
Thank
not.
you for attending.
Oh,
So thank
Well,
you
then-
guys for coming.
hey, we love having you in the audience if you want to stay. We often
Gonna
don't
be-
get company.
Gonna be empty.
We're gonna make worse decisions. maybe.
Okay.
Everybody can attend the December 17th work session, because I can flip that in.
Yeah.
We all go. Yeah. Probably virtually, yeah.
Okay.
No, I'll be here. Okay. I need to be explicit that we're inviting a school district.
You'll be here on 17th
You make it December 17th.
for a work session. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Approval lift recommendation for to fund an arcade. So
I move to approve the lift recommendation to fund an arcade. Spin Zone Arcade specifically.
right. I got a motion to approve lift recommendations to fund an arcade. Can I get a second?
I'd second that.
Motion by, second by Councilman Larson. Discussion.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Jumping in a lot tonight. I'm a no vote on this motion. It's not an easy decision to make. I spoke, thank you, Ms. Fisher, so much for the information and the background earlier this week. I find it really difficult to think about an investment of taxpayer dollars in a business that doesn't yet have a lease on land or a building. So we're looking at equipment that is far down the road in the lifespan of this prospective business. And I'm uncomfortable with that. And so I won't support this motion.
Okay. Other discussion? Councilman White.
I think those are valid points that have been brought up by Councilmember Stubble. There's also still a bit of confusion about whether or not the kind of building they want to create is actually allowable on the lot they intend to build, which gives me pause for that. And while I know, unfortunately, from my point of view, I was really keen for us with new businesses to only vet them after they've had a business plan created with SBDC. That has not happened here. I find some of their projections, their overall projections, I mean, that would be lovely if it came to be, but boy, 30 to 40,000 each month from arcade and laundry seems like a really ambitious one. to me, there's enough unknowns that I am uncomfortable providing funding for this one. I mean, I love their idea and they're incredibly motivated. Just seems like they've got a few more things to get in row before we know that they're on more stable footing.
Any other questions? Concerns? Yes, I'm gonna call for the vote. Councilman Larson,
No.
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 I'm gonna move on to H. Approve lift recommendation to fund Noel's 60th anniversary celebration. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Got a motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Cox. And open up for discussion.
Mayor, if I may,
Council, yes.
if
you
I may
may.
clarify, Mr. Larson, Councilman Larson, is that motion to fund them at the, I'm just checking, the lift recommendation is $60,000?
No.
Okay.
No, it's, but let's just get the questions going here and then we can discuss the, yeah.
Okay,
So I think we
you
would.
have the floor.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to process for a minute of what the motion is, and then, because my preference with this application is to fund at the level that Knowles wrote down would be their minimum for moving the event forward, which is $45,000. And here's some of my reasoning. It's certainly an ambitious event. It would be, I can see it having a major impact on the town with new visitation, sales tax dollars generated, lots of people moving around and spending money in town. So I'm excited. I'm thankful. I don't know if there's a Knowles representative here for considering hosting this in Lander, where there's such a strong, obviously, heritage and legacy for the business and the community. That being said, when I went through the applications of other events that we funded, we haven't funded an event even close to this level yet, and we've had some pretty impactful events that we've helped support. So that caught my eye. I believe the next highest, so Marilyn, correct me if I'm wrong here, the next highest amount we've awarded to an event is $28,000. When I looked at the budget Knowles provided for this, I also was trying to look through to see where we would actually have this money go to local vendors, Lander local vendors, or Fremont County at a minimum. And it certainly seems like there's some opportunity, but some of those costs would not support local business. And I want to see these dollars recirculate as much as we can. And so I'm in favor of the amount that Knowles said we could go forward with the event at $45,000, not the total ask. And that we can somehow tie just maybe some intentions here and how we make the motion that we want to see these reimbursements go as much as possible to Lander local, Fremont County local vendors. But clearly an impactful event, an important business for our town that's made major contributions to Lander. I feel a little that there's a couple news items out of Knowles recently that makes it feel a little troubling to me about their renewed commitment in town. And it's difficult to sort of say, but you know, this is the year where we saw some layoffs from this organization of Lander jobs. We don't see the same number of executive leadership jobs here in Lander for Knowles that we used to see. I'd like to see that changed. I don't have a say in that. It's how they run their business as a council member, but it is troubling to see that as workforces get more remote, Knowles is also moving some workforce out of Lander. So I hope this event reestablishes a strong commitment to Lander, frankly, and keeps that community tie really strong, because that is an important business, both for our economic development, but also for our sense of community and place and for so many people who live here. So I think that long speech, Mayor, thank you for the privilege there. I think would be an amendment then, Adam, is that correct? I would move we amend the award amount to $45,000 with the intention that those are spent as much as possible on local vendors.
Councilman Larson.
Question there, do we have an idea that gives us the local vendors what is gonna actually be put out there to incur their services?
May I answer before we do a second on that amendment?
She made a motion, so there needs to be a second before a question can be asked.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thanks.
Motion by Councilman.
I mean,
Stevens,
I don't want to tie their hands too
Woman
much.
Cox?
I don't want to tie hands too much, but when I looked at the budget that was provided, you know, in our stacker, catering came to mind. That's pretty clearly, I imagine we have local vendors who can supply the catering needs, AV equipment, linens and cleaning services. I'm just trying to pull it up, but I think that, you know, that's why I don't want to make it black and white. They have to do local vendors, but I think that if we can say as much as possible, there are options here that can be provided by local service providers.
Do they need the full $45,000? I guess that's what
I'm sorry.
what I'm asking.
Versus like
I mean, Marilyn, that might be a question. I'll try to answer and then jump in here. I mean, in the application, it said the minimum for the event to go forward, the minimum funding needed from LIFT for the event to go forward is 45,000. And the total budget is 200 something.
Councilwoman Struble.
Go ahead.
I would just like to say that during their pitch, they did highlight that they felt a great majority of the funds would go to local businesses. And we asked about the $45,000 number, and they said that would, if it was anything less than that, they would really have to cut back on some of the events that they would be providing that would be bringing people in, and a lot of the community engagement. So I guess that's where their cutoff was for having a quality event. They would have to cut back after that.
Mayor?
Yes.
From what I read on the application that they said, you know, if the 45,000 was not doable, that they had the option of going to private investors and their board to help make up the difference there. And they've got a pretty healthy board, you know. $45,000 is a lot of money to put out for a single event. And I'm pretty I'm not real comfortable with it, you know, and I don't know what a comfortable price for me would be. I'm saying $25,000, $30,000. I would feel a lot better at, but you know, I don't want to cut the thing off at the knees. You know, if that's what it's going to do. But it sounds to me like they've got some options there.
Right. Any other questions? Right now, we gotta.
Real quick, I don't know, I'm having a hard, you gotta throw one hell of a party for that amount of money. I mean, that's gotta be some pretty good stuff, but you know, that's a one-time event. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around wanting to sink money into something that would be around for longer. You know, granted, we tabled the softball thing. I mean, that's the best one out of all of these I've seen. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around that much money for a party and having that bring that much revenue in.
Right. That's a good one.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, it would be a high amount for what we've historically given to events through this, from the collections of the half cent. It is, I mean, I do see the impact here though, right? They're speaking about 100+ people coming to town. It's a multi-day event. I mean, if there are local caterers, right, that's $30,000 budgeted to go to caterers. So that's significant cash circulating in the community just from catering. Clearly there's other, you know, rentals of tents and swag, and I'm going through the list here, you know, local bands. So I think there is significant recirculation potential here. And there would be significant sales tax generated. And that being said, yeah, it's a lot of money for a multi-day event from when we compare to what we have done out for events historically.
Okay, Shari?
I just wanted to point out a couple of things. After they presented to us, they did let us know that they are having, his name is Alex Hanad. He is like the top climber. When I've talked to other people about it, everybody knows this guy. He climbed El Capitan without a rope. So they really feel like this is a big draw for people that will travel here to see and be able to be a part of this individuals coming and presenting. They did say that they will be bringing all of their instructors from all over the United States. So they'll be filling the hotels and that with these people eating in the restaurants. They are renting the community center. They are during that time for events, and they are renting the city park for things that are open to the public, which include this Alex coming and speaking and doing additional climbing events in the area. And you did award to the state gymnastics $30,000 for a shorter event, in time span for a shorter event.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, since
Okay.
there are no
Mr.
questions,
Mayor,
oh, you
one-
got one?
So, sorry, thank you for that. And then I likewise see pros and cons of this one for sure. And I'm also reminded that there is an arm of Knowles that is a revenue generating, and they did last year contribute 29,000 in sales tax, and that's a pretty consistent contribution to sales tax. So I know sometimes we have heartburn about supporting nonprofits because they're not generating sales tax, but wanted to note that Knowles does indeed contribute to the sales tax part there. And I mean, I don't know if you would entertain Council Member Stubble a friendly amendment to your amendment. I would want to see reimbursement of the 45,000 only for lander-based businesses. But that's to you to either accept or deny.
We already have an amendment on the floor to award 45,000 with the second. You'd have to have
You'd have to vote on the first amendment. And I'm not sure how these funds can be limited in the way that you guys are proposing, because I think it's just a grant of the money and they have the right to use it however, but that's your guys' motion, so.
Well, then, Mayor, if I may, then I agree with the intentions, Councilwoman White, but if we have questions about if we can actually tie those directly, how about I'll say no to that friendly amendment, very friendly. And when we communicate this, sorry, I'm not sure who has the communication tools, that's the council's wish as much of whatever we pass in an amount is spent on local vendors. And they hopefully will take those intentions seriously if we don't directly put it in the contract.
Okay, now we have a motion on the floor to award $45,000. Motion and a second. So that's a motion we're gonna go with right now. I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Larson,
No.
Yes.
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 okay, motion carries. All right. Now do we have to go to the first amendment? 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Yes. I didn't know I had to vote on that one. I thought it was 3-2. So. Okay, I see. I've been here a long time. I still haven't. My toes are stuck.
And Mr. Mayor, you now have to vote on the actual application.
Right. We have a motion and a second to vote on the original application. Call for the question, Councilman Hahn.
No.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes. All right. Now we can go back to the beginning. Kids all left now and feel pretty bad. Yes. All right, next on our agenda, 3 is we have a public hearing. Open the public hearing at 8:07. Hearing's open. You want to do the reading, Rachel?
There's not much to read because we don't have like a ordinance or an agenda, but as you can see from your packet, there's been an application for a new bar and grill liquor license. I believe he is here in the audience. My understanding is that he is purchasing the end zone where it's currently located and will rebrand it, rename it to his business name. And this is the public hearing, so that's what's going on. And as we get farther down into the agenda, there may be more information to come.
Okay, we introduced the reading. Got comments from the council? Anybody have comments?
No.
Not for the vote? Okay. public comment from the audience. Just come up to that mic right there. Mhm. I knew you would.
Charles Woolwine. Fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, meth kill around 113,000 Americans every year. Alcohol all by itself kills around 143,000 people every year. With that in mind, I simply want to offer some food for thought regarding the approval of a new liquor license. This morning I went to the pool. I love the pool, right? Following my swim, I drove west on Main Street to the first alcohol distribution site I could find. I then drove 1.8 miles east on Main Street to the last alcohol distribution site I could find. In that 1.8 miles, I easily counted 27 drug alcohol distribution sites. 27. Do we really need 27 alcohol sites within a mere 1.8 miles? I mean, how many drug alcohol distribution centers does a town of 5,000 adults need? Are you kidding me? Now, we've got about 7,600 people, but there's a little over 5,000 that are over 18 years old. So do we really need 27 distribution sites for this drug alcohol? Last Thursday, I visited Riverton's municipal court. Shackled men shuffled before the judge. All of the cases were drug related, but no meth, no heroin, no cocaine, no fentanyl related cases. No, all of the cases were alcohol related. Every one of them. Then I ran into a friend who told me about 10 deaths among people he knew. They all occurred over a very short period of time. I asked him, how many of these deaths were alcohol related? He responded, oh, all of them, all of them. Then a couple of days ago, a friend of mine sent me an email. I believe you guys got the same email. In it, my friend relayed how their police officer relative had told them that the problems he dealt with were 100% alcohol related. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Since there is none, I'm going to close the hearing at 8:12. Close. Moving on, communication from the floor. Any communication from the floor? You'll have 3 minutes. I didn't read that statement, so.
My name is Kesha Martell, and I am the president of the Lander Girls Softball League. I am also the coach of the 14U champions this year for state champions, and the mom of one of the girls. I just felt, thank you for moving us forward. That was great for the girls. I just felt it needed to be noted that this money that the 0.5% tax has gone to many private businesses, right? And those private businesses have put it in their own buildings, and they could turn around and sell that building tomorrow, and nobody asked why they get to keep that money when the money's gone. So the question that the school district, our school district gets to keep the money, to me is like a little off, right? Because if, as a community, who would we want to put our money into? Right? I know it's for economic development. I know that hopefully moving forward, we're going to create more economic development by having more tournaments here, and hopefully by having high school ball, which will open up maintenance for those fields for a long period of time. But I don't think to say that it's going to benefit the school district should hold us back. And I'm hoping that you will include us in those meetings, as we have worked really, really hard. And I do appreciate you saying that they own some part of that, but also include us in those meetings so that we can make sure that we're doing the best things for the girls as well. We have worked really hard just to provide opportunities, to provide a batting cage. And then it's come to our attention that it is our responsibility to also keep the fields up to par, at least for the next 10 years. We keep being told in 10 years, maybe something will happen. But I also know as a community member, I've heard about a rec center and a swimming pool, and I can't disagree with that either. So you can't guarantee in 10 years that I'll have new softball fields. We really just need new softball fields, not new softball fields. Let me reiterate, we just need safe softball fields for right now. Thank you for considering.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, I think you're safe.
Yes.
Charlie.
We'll change the subject here. Reproductive rights. I currently do not know of a single woman in the United States who does not have the right to reproduce. All women in the USA have that right. When living in China, we witnessed a one-child policy, but in the United States, women have the unfettered right to try. But the current reproductive rights campaign has nothing to do with the woman's right to reproduce and everything to do with some people wanting the act of harming defenseless, innocent little unborn girls and boys to remain legal. In my personal opinion, the deliberate harming of innocent, defenseless, unborn little girls and boys is a heinous and cowardly thing to do. Last month, during the 40 Days for Life campaign, I never encountered a woman who told me that they felt as if they did not have the right to reproduce. Not one. No, what they really were insistent upon was for it to remain legal to deliberately harm unborn little girls and boys. Rosie and I, that's my wife, Rosie and I, we know a couple who live in Florida. They have very kind hearts. In the same area lives a female drug user. She is constantly in and out of jail. A very sad situation. This person became pregnant. When born, the child was put up for adoption. Our friends, wanting the baby to have a good life, adopted the baby. The woman went back to jail. When she got out, she had a second baby. Our friends adopted the second child. Again, the lady went to jail, got out, a third baby. Another adoption by our friends. Back to jail, out again, another baby. So our friends adopted 4 of this woman's babies. Today, all 4 siblings are living together in a wonderful and loving home. You might ask, so what? Well, my point tonight is this. In America, this drug-dependent, in and out of jail individual has embraced and fulfilled her right to reproduce multiple times and may do so again. Yes, in America, without a doubt, women have the right to reproduce. So in essence, what is this reproductive rights issue all about? Simply this. Some men and women want the act of deliberately harming unborn, defenseless little girls and boys to remain legal. Postscript. Tragically, October 22nd, Grizzly 399 was struck and killed by a vehicle. Grizzly 399 was 28 years old, had birthed at least 22 cubs, had some 54,000 followers on social media, and had been crowned the Queen of the Tetons. Grizzly 399 was known as a fiercely protective mother. I think it is wonderful that in Wyoming, it is illegal to kill unborn grizzly bears. I'm thrilled that Wyoming, in essence, is a safe haven for unborn little grizzly bear cubs. But how on earth can it be illegal to kill unborn little grizzly bears while at the same time legal to kill unborn little girls and boys? Have we lost our collective minds? Perhaps that most destructive of all drugs, alcohol, has finally fried our brains to the point that we can no longer think rationally.
Charles, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. Hang on.
Thank you. Yes.
Get that a little taller.
State your name and stuff.
John Shade. I'm here to voice my support for the Lander girls softball. I'm a father of one of the girls that was here tonight. I was also a coach this last year. And I'm impressed with this board. They have worked tirelessly to try and figure out how can we make this a viable option, something that will work. You go to our fields, quite frankly, it's sad. We have light poles leaning over. I'm just wondering when a great wind is going to knock one over and take out the one dugout. It's sad. We went to the state tournament this year, and man, it's beautiful. It was manicured. All their fences are straight. You know, it's one of those things that I see where we need to put priority on our kids. Our kids are our future. We talk about economic development. Well, what better economic development is it when we put money into our kids, making our kids feel like they're welcome, that they are part of this community. So when they grow up, they want to stay here. They want to raise their family here. To me, that's economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other communication from the floor? Nope, okay. Right. So, since we'll move on. We're down to unfinished business. Item A, approve the second reading of ordinance 2025-1, amending Title 13, Section 13-12-1, street right-of-ways and alleyway excavation permits included in utility poles. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
A motion by Councilman Cox, second.
Second.
Got second by Councilman Stubble. We'll call for the question if there is no questions. Councilman Larson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, move on to item B. Approval of second reading ordinance 2025-2, granting Spectrum Pacific West LLC and indirect subsidiary of Charter Communication, Inc. in succession and assign the right of permissions and authorize construction, installing, maintaining, and operating cable systems in the designated service areas, limiting the term of said grant, prescribed the term of the conditions under which said company may operate. And I get a motion in a second. You don't have to read the whole thing.
So moved. Yeah, we're going shortcut.
Second.
I got a motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Cox to approve ordinance 2025-2. Any questions? Gonna call for a question, Councilman Hahn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on. I gotta get rid of my scribbles here. Approval application of new bar and grill liquor license for Wild West Warehouse, DBA Grizzly Bar and Grill, 629 Main Street, Lander, 82520, Original Township, Lot 11, Block 13, Commercial. Can I get a motion in a second?
Make a motion.
Got a motion from Councilman Hahn,
Second.
second by Councilman Cox. Motion discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
and I believe that Mr. Young is present here today. He's the individual applying for this license. It's my understanding he's purchasing the end zone from Josh Apodaca. His materials have been presented to the state. However, there was a correction memo on 3 items. He has provided those to Kevin Kulo. Kevin is the one that does the liquor licenses. We have not heard back from the state on whether or not those are acceptable documents. So the state has not cleared his application. Just so that you know that he has applied for it. In the past, the council has approved it pending the all clear from the state. You could table it pending the all clear from the state, or of course you could vote not to grant the license. Those are the 3 choices as I see them, faced with what we have, not having the state okay the application as of yet.
That's, I like that update. And just a quick clarification on the notice of application for bar and grill license. Just check Grizzly. I just saw it, or I would have noticed it on Wild West Warehouse LLC. It's Grizzy instead of Grizzly. But I don't know, that probably went out to the Journal. We're fine. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I don't think. We're good.
What, I'm sorry, council member, are you looking at the application itself in the packet or
Just the notice.
Oh, the
But
notice?
that already went out.
Oh, okay, that
Yeah,
had a
we're fine.
typo in
Yep,
it.
yep.
Okay. And it is Wild West Warehouse, who is the parent.
Is the LLC, okay.
Mayor, given the update from our clerk, I don't know who made the motion now, but can we amend it to move approval of this application pending the acceptance or the approval from the state?
Yeah, that's a motion.
I think,
We can
wasn't there
just-
one on the table already?
We had a motion, but we'll come back and vote on that one.
That's a motion, that's a motion for an amendment.
Right.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion a second?
So what was missing was his financial statement. Oftentimes we'll see information from a bank, which is a letter from the bank or something, a balance sheet. The state does have a form. They don't use it very much anymore, but that was provided to Mr. Young for him to fill out, and he did provide that to the state, but we have yet to hear back.
I do want to make a comment about
Go
the
ahead.
establishment. I think, and thank you for being here tonight.
Come up to the-
Yeah.
You come
if
up to the
could come
mic,
up.
please.
You know,
Before you comment, there has been a motion and a second, and so just wanted to make sure that was noted.
okay, thank you. Just discussion wise, where I stand with the establishment, it's been known for underage drinking, violence. You know, it's been a concern of mine as a council member and a citizen. And I would hope that you take that very seriously as the new owner. You know, the easiest thing is to not serve people who aren't old enough to drink, but then also cooperating with law enforcement when in the event there happens to be, because the Lander Police Department is going to be your best ally. But you got to be, and I don't anticipate that you would be. But I am saying that I know that there's been underage drinking, and I know there has been concerns with the current establishment. So I always like a new business. We needed a good place to eat, other varieties. So just know that I just wanted that noted.
Well, and I can give you an example too. So I've currently been managing the End Zone Bar and Grill since October 1st for Josh. You know, during our costume party, our Halloween costume party, we ran over 300 tabs and not one single altercation that night. Had 4 bouncers present. And then we had a single entrance exit kind of strategy there. We had everybody wristbanded, anybody that snuck by, you know, they made it to the bar, they were sent back to get wristbands. Our tolerance for altercations in the bar has been reduced significantly. My management's a little bit tighter. I mean, I'm there constantly. Josh kind of bounced between here and Cheyenne. That's my full intent. I mean, that's liability to me too, as well as, you know, other people in the community. So, and I mean, we've busted, you know, underage people trying to come in and stuff, but we haven't had a single issue so far. Any physical altercations or rang right out the door. So,
Great.
and I've introduced myself to, you know, members of the police department multiple times. They know me by name, you know, so, you know, we're willing to comply with them, you know, in any way possible. I've got more surveillance coming for the west side of the building. Currently has nothing right now. So, I mean, we're gonna be up in security. I have funds being spent specifically on that, so
Great.
that all locks changed. Been very minimal.
Good.
It's been handled very quickly, so.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I really appreciate your diligence in taking care of and nipping problems in the bud. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's my livelihood as well, so it doesn't pay me dividends to have fights in the bar or anything like that. It's a lot more cleanup for us, but we just don't tolerate it. We're trying to that's why we're rebranding completely. I'm not actually purchasing End Zone Food and Beverage LLC. We're rebranding, we're doing our own thing. I'm taking his idea and we're moving forward with it. We've got like $20,000 worth of memorabilia hung up, signed stuff. We're trying to get some pros up here to maybe do a signing for some kids. Try and create some cool events like that. There's some continued remodeling that's gonna take place. Yeah, I mean, my vision's completely different, so. And it's a bar and grill till 10 o'clock, you know what I mean? So it's supposed to be kid friendly, things like that. It's a restaurant during the day, so. That's what we want it to be.
All right, got a motion on the floor. And a second, pending your approval from State Liquor Division. I'm gonna call for the question now. Councilman Larson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right,
I appreciate the opportunity.
thank you. Item.
So you
Oh,
just
hold
voted
on,
on
we
the
got to do
amendment. Now
another-
you have to
Yeah, yeah,
vote on the motion as amended.
yes, now we gotta vote on the motion as amended. So we have it. I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Hahn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on. Are we done with that? Thank you very much, but
Yeah.
appreciate it. All right, item B, new business, approval of seasonal equipment operator job description. Can I get a motion in a second? And we move for discussion.
Move to approve the seasonal equipment operator job description?
Second?
That motion by Councilwoman Cox, second by Councilwoman White. Discussion. Questions? Rachel, did you have anything? Hunter, did you?
Seems like a great idea to have another person on hand. I'm not sure what seasonal means. Is that October 1 to April 1, or I don't know if that's known yet, but knowing how dependent we are on our crews and contracting crews, and a lot of plowing happens when people have cold and flu, and just seems smart to have another
An
person
extra
who can
operator on board.
step in.
Do you have anything?
No, the only comment I had was concerning the definition of seasonal. I don't know exactly when someone would come on board, but seasonal can be no longer than 6 months.
Okay. I got a motion in a second and a call for the question. Councilman Hahn?
Did you call for the question?
That's what I'm doing.
Yes.
Call for the question. You distracted me. I'm waiting on your vote now. Where are you going?
You next.
No, you-
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries. Item C. Revoking encroachment licenses with K and L Investments, 865 North Second. Can I get a motion in a second to revoke that?
So moved.
I get a second.
Second?
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman White to revoke encroachment license with KLC Investment. And then we're gonna revisit it again here in a minute. So I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Larson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, moving on, carries. We're moving now to item D. Authorize the mayor to sign encroachment licenses for 865 North Second. Yes, and Elzay.
Mayor,
Can read that for me.
I move authorization to sign the encroachment license for 865 North Second for Washkoviak and Elzay. And I hope that Councilman Hahn seconds, because this side of the table is not.
Second.
We got a second, got a motion by Councilman Stubble, second by Councilman Jay Hahn. Any discussion on that? All right, I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Hahn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item E. Discuss voting for a winter WHAM voting delegate. First of all, who's going for that? I'll be there.
I think I'll be able to attend. I'll be in Cheyenne the week before for the State Advisory Council on Juvenile Justice and meeting with legislators. But then I believe I'll be there, I believe.
If you would touch base with me so that we can get you registered. and
I
get you a
will.
Hotel room.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No, we haven't voted yet. You want to be it?
No, you have to vote on it. It's a voting item.
I know, we're gonna vote on it. So I just wanted to see.
I guess there hasn't been a motion yet is what I
No,
was
there
pointing
hasn't been a motion. I just want to see who was going so we could make the motion. And if you don't make it, I'll be there, like we did
Okay,
before.
am I the only one?
Me,
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
I might attend, but not enough to be committed as a delegate,
Yeah.
as you know. Mayor, I move that we approve Council President Cox as our winter WAM voting delegate.
Okay, a second.
Second?
We got a motion and a second, and the call for the question, Councilman Larson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, and move clear down to item I. Approval suspension of the half-cent economic development tax fund distribution. Can I get a motion in a second, or do you want to discuss it first? So we don't have to add more amendments.
Or- So this is suspension after,
After we do these.
after.
So you would have to make an amendment to this to be able to say that it's after this, is it a quarter? I don't know if it's a,
After this quarter.
yes,
Yeah.
it's fiscal quarter.
Also, clarify, so when you suspend it, are you still going to give the 20 and 10 to air transportation and ground through the rest of the normal cycle? You're just suspending what you're gonna do with the excess that would have been the 70% to go to economic development?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may,
You make that.
I think this agenda item actually was a little confusing the way it was written from the council's intentions, so we're gonna amend this one a lot. What I would propose is that what the consideration we have here is that we are suspending the distribution of grants through the LIFT program and the LIFT committee after we complete this funding cycle, since we have the softball league open, but that we don't proceed with any more cycles of LIFT grant, of funding of the LIFT grant. To me, that is a separate issue that we should discuss that suspension. Are we not distributing the half cent for the ballot language, which we have to? So I don't, it's actually a little confusing, Shari, the way I think you brought that up, that we can't choose not to send those collections over through the end of the tax collection period because the ballot. Yeah, great, thank you. So that's not the question.
So
That's
the
looking at-
amendment would have to be what you said, the first part.
Great, but there's no motion on the table, so we have to amend the agenda. What are we amending here?
Just made her motion. Now I need to get a second.
You'll have to have a motion first,
Great.
a second, and then an amendment vote, and then vote on the original as amended.
You're a hard one to deal with
Oh,
tonight.
man. Well,
Well,
if
I need a
I,
motion.
There has to be a motion first on
and
the
does the motion
agenda
have to
item.
be what the agenda item is?
Yes, unless you want to move to amend the
Okay.
agenda.
Oh, it's too late.
Great.
So let's make a motion to approve the suspension of the half-cent economic development tax. And then we'll add the amendment to it.
I'll do the amendment. Somebody else do the motion.
So I need somebody to do a motion. You,
Doing a straight motion
Yes.
of how I currently reads.
Right.
Okay, so moved.
get a second.
Yes.
Motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Larson.
Robert and his many rules.
So
Jeez.
move on. Now we're ready for your
Great.
amendment.
Mayor, I move that we amend the motion on the table, that we suspend the distribution of half-cent economic development taxes through the LIFT program as grants, and we suspend the LIFT committee after we finalize this funding cycle's awardees.
Okay, second.
And bravo for.
Second. So is that clear? Okay, I just want to see a thumbs up beside you. All right, now I'm gonna call for the question.
May I ask a quick question?
Oh, no way.
I think it's important to
Go.
be able to, on the website, show that it's suspended and that's, we're able to do that straight away. Okay. Right.
I think everybody's tired.
Oh, sure.
I mean, Mary, I know we're tired. It's worth saying, because I fear we won't have the opportunity to say it again. Marilyn, I think you're on East Coast time, so God love you. Or you're off by now, maybe. Clearly, I think we're all share deep gratitude for all the volunteers who've served on the LIFT committee through the last 4 years. They've put in incredible amounts of hours and time and investment in trying to figure out, frankly, what we wanted in terms of our priorities and matrices, and then going through all the applications and pitch nights. It's just, I can't imagine how much time they put in. And so, Mayor, I don't know how else we can express our gratitude to those volunteers, but they've done fantastic work.
They really have, and I gotta echo that very much, so. Any volunteers that we get, we need to make sure we thank them. And we'll figure out something. Okay, now can I call for the question? On the amendment, Councilman Larson.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm gonna call for the question on the original amendment. As
As
amended. Amended. Councilman Hahn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I don't know. I think we're just hitting our groove.
Yeah.
Like,
Get a
yeah,
motion
move to adjourn.
I get a second?
Second.
Call for the question, Councilman Hahn.
Yes.
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 Meeting adjourned. Y'all have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.